Hello, best friends. My name is Kyle Stevenson, aka WhoDatNinja73, and welcome to episode 3 of Best Friends Talk Funny, a one-on-one, kind of funny vids community podcast where we get to know best friends better. I want to, again, personally thank each and every one of you who have listened, even if it was just for a little bit, and maybe it wasn't your thing, that's totally fine. But the fact that you clicked on it and you took a chance means a lot to me. This episode is going to be another great one. This one's all about a good friend of mine, Devin Alexander White, who does not have a Twitter. We will get into that, I think. If he does have a Twitter, he's hiding it from us, and I don't appreciate that, Devin. He is the creator of the Kind of Wrestling subgroup on Facebook, and a big reason why I am so involved in both the Facebook group on Twitter and just Kind of Funny in general. So I hope that you are excited for episode 3. Again, if you want to be on the show, reach out to me, and we'll make things happen. And without further ado, let's get to know a best friend.
Kinda Funny is best friends. What that means is we are there for each other. What that means is that you can go to any Kinda Funny live event. You can go to an RTX. You can go to a PAX. And if you see someone in one of our shirts, you can go up and talk to them. You can go to dinner with them. Kinda Funny is this.
So today, Devin, my Canadian friend.
Yeah, that's me. That's me.
The first international guest.
Well, I'm quite honored. Quite honored. From the far land of Canada, so far away from you. I actually think I'm closer to you than Zyger is. So. Very
true. Yeah, because you're from where in Canada?
I'm on the East Coast.
Okay.
Yeah, so Cape Breton. It's in Nova Scotia, one of the Canadian provinces. Where I'm at now, I'm currently in New Brunswick doing school. I'm probably about 3.5 hours away from the border, right there in Maine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I'm pretty East Coast of Canada. Yeah.
Probably as East Coast as you can get.
Well, yeah, unless you're going over to Newfoundland, that's like its own little island, far east. But actually, it's not too little. It's actually quite big. But
I'm actually fascinated with how big of a country Canada is, like in general.
Yeah, it's quite big. But see, the thing is everybody's so centralized towards the bottom portion that there's nothing in the northern portion except silly people.
Yeah, I was about to say, do people actually live all the way up there?
Yeah, there is. There's a lot of work up there, actually. A lot of oil fields and stuff like that.
Okay.
So, and there is, a decent population, but I'd say it's significantly less than what's down towards, the southern part.
Yeah. So, what kind of things are you doing lately? How's school going?
Oh, man, school's, it's school. I'm getting towards the end of my program. I have a 4-month work placement coming up. Mm-hmm. I've been doing the video game programming course here. I enjoy it. The thing is it's very broad. It's such a huge workload to take on, and it encompasses a lot. But on the flip side is I am learning a lot of new things, and am developing a habit of getting into it, and it's becoming a hobby. So, I'm hoping to make the best of it.
For the video game side of things, are you going into like the coding side, the visual aspect of it?
Well, my program primarily consisted of the programming stuff. We use a lot of engines and stuff like that. I'm not completely settled on pursuing the programming aspect completely, because there was other things that were touched on, animation and art and stuff like that. but primarily it's programming is the course I'm in.
Okay. And is that something you always wanted to do when you were younger?
No. It's one of the things that actually happened because of the community, and kind of funny. I never really envisioned, going forward and doing that, especially on the east coast of Canada. There are some hotbeds in Canada as far as the industry is concerned. Montreal, Vancouver, those are two big ones. And I don't really have any interest in uprooting my life and living there. So it was always kind of something that I never really considered. But after, doing some research and, the community, probably I'd say 2 years ago, there was a shift in my mindset when it comes to the community. And, I decided to pursue it because, it's, why not? Why not, right? It's the only thing that really interested me. And, like they say, you have to enjoy the work you do. So that's,
absolutely.
That's something that kind of stuck with me, and I pursued this route of education.
Now, you said there was a shift a couple of years ago. What was that shift that made you change minds?
Well, it's one of the things, like the community is built on positivity, and that's hard. We say to always see the good in things, and to be positive and better and kind to each other, but that's a lot easier said than done. And I feel like that part of it isn't really talked about too much. Especially, everybody has an opinion and everybody can voice that opinion. So for me, I was about 2.5 years ago, I was coming towards the end of my stint. I actually worked in the oil fields up north that we talked about earlier. Yeah, I was there for about 2 years. Wasn't doing great work, but I was getting paid well. So I'm
sure it was probably really hard work too, right?
Well, I mean, I was fortunate. I was inside. I basically fed everyone that actually doing the hard work.
Oh, okay.
So I had it pretty easy. But, still, you're out there. You're 21 days straight out there in the middle of the woods. There's not really... You can't go anywhere. There's... limited internet. There for 21 days straight, 12-hour days. And it takes a toll. And me on the East Coast, right? I would go out there, I'd work my 21 days, I'd take one full day to travel back to the East Coast, only really have 5 days off, and then take another full day to go back. So doing that for 2 years took its toll on me, right?
Yeah, I can totally imagine that.
Yeah, so... the shift came, towards the end of that, because if it wasn't for Kind of Funny and the content that they put out, though that time out there would have been extremely difficult. So a work day for me generally consisted of, I would start at 11 o'clock at night, and I would finish at 11 o'clock in the morning, and I was the baker's assistant. So what that consisted of was I would have to individually wrap all of their products. So when you're talking 700 men at a camp and 2 cookies per person, that's 1,400 cookies individually wrapped.
A baker's dozen.
Yeah, the real baker's dozen. The real baker's dozen. And that's just the cookies, right? So not to get into a whole thing of that, but it's mindless work. It's just assembly line work. And, I kind of got into podcasts, obviously. It was beyond. It was, Colin and Greg, and then discovering Kind of Funny. And this was they haven't even quit their jobs yet. This was late 2014. So... Yeah,
that's about around the same time I started with them. Maybe a little bit earlier, maybe in 2013, but...
Yeah, and so for me it was, okay, well... This is going to go a lot quicker now because I'll have, a couple hours of podcasts to listen to between what IGN was putting up, Kind of Funny, and everything. It was great. And then once they transitioned into quitting at IGN and starting their own thing, that every morning when I got off work, I would have a new video to look forward to. You know, they did things a little differently back then. So, you know, every day there was a Let's Play of some sort. I remember Teaching Tuesdays and stuff like that. So, like, every day I'd get off work and I'd have a YouTube video to look forward to. So it was much needed. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, when it comes to the shift, you could get behind the mantra of the positivity and you know, and being good to each other. But I was also still just a jaded person, right? Like, a little bit of a chip on my shoulder, and not saying I was an asshole or anything like that, but like, you know, I wouldn't go out of my way to just leave the nice comment. You know what I mean? And that's one thing that they'll always say, you know, that you'll get people that would rather say something shitty than the 10 people that liked it and didn't say anything. So I definitely fell into that camp. So yeah, and slowly over time that started to go away, and I would leave, you know, a positive comment, and then it's funny how that just then bleeds into your normal life. Right? It's crazy. It's
That's what I like to tell people. It's like, if you put it out there, it's hard to describe how great you feel when you give it out to people.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that, like, you know, 3 years ago I'd roll my eyes at that, but it's the truth, right? Like, it's changed even my experience at school recently, right? Like, it is a very difficult up and down course, right? So just now being the guy in the room that says, you want to know what, well, let's take these positives from it and let's see what we can make out of it. And that is absolutely because of the community and the culture that it you know, that it nourishes and tries to grow.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking of culture and what we grew, you, my friends, the reason I met you was because you started our little Kind of Wrestling subgroup on Facebook.
Yeah, wild how that's grown.
It's insane. So basically how I met you was, I want to say it was SummerSlam 2 years ago now?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Around that time, you created the group. It was after a time where in the Kind of Funny Facebook group, wrestling was like a punching bag for a lot of people.
Yeah, it wasn't, and not to say, you know, that it was looked down upon or something like that, but no. we were definitely starting to kind of take over, right? And not in a we're taking over kind of way, ECW, WCW invasion, you know, but
it was getting bigger and bigger.
It was. There was something there, and, you know, we'd throw up a thread, and there'd be, I'd look and I'd be like, wow, there's a lot of activity on there, right? Like, and, you know, you'd look, okay, there's about 25, 30 people in there, and, you know, but we're reaching 600-700, you know, comments on a thread. So I was like, I think there's something there. You know, so that's kind of what spawned the idea of Kind of Wrestling. And so yeah, that SummerSlam weekend, I made the Facebook group, and I also launched the Prediction League.
Yeah, which is still going strong.
Still going.
As of recording, we have a pay-per-view tomorrow, Fastlane, that we had to send predictions in for.
Yeah, and we've found a much more efficient way to get it done.
Oh my god, the beginning stages of that, like when the reason we, you know, started talking, I think you were going to Survivor Series, you were going to be there in person, and you needed somebody to kind of take over for the Prediction League for that weekend.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, I'll take a stab at it.
Big mistake, brother.
I don't know about mistake because, like I've told you before, I was active, but I was very much like a lurker. Wanted to, you know, kind of not be seen. I'll throw my hat in the ring every once in a while.
Yeah.
But me offering to do that, I was like, you know what? I love what we have going here. I want to do more because I could tell, like, it was a lot of work. And because of that, like, that's why I'm doing this show. It's gotten me more involved in the community. That's how I was more involved in the main Kind of Funny Facebook group, which has got me to a spot where the admins wanted to have me on their team, and I'm so grateful for that. And that all starts from when you were going to the show, you lucky bastard, and you needed someone to help out.
Yeah,
so
well,
I thank you for that, but
no, and I thank you. Like if I knew then what I know now, right? Like, so you have to understand the way that we would do this is.
Oh yeah, that's where I was going with. I got off on a tangent.
Let's explain what this involved, right? So, what I would do I would post the card, and everybody sends in their predictions.
Mm-hmm. And for anyone that doesn't know what the card is, like if you're not a wrestling fan, every pay-per-view there's a set number of matches. So it'd be like The Rock versus Stone Cold, blah blah blah, and just there'd be about 7 or 8 matches, and the card would just be every single match like on a poster or something.
Yeah. So we would get everybody to send their predictions to me via Facebook. What I would then do is I would open up that message. I would write down in a binder that I actually had all their predictions with their name, and I would send them a thumbs up. So in the span of 2 or 3 days, I would get about 60 to 70 of these things, and I'd have to handwrite them all out. And then after the card, I would have to go and put check marks and then tallies. So like, I didn't know what I was doing, right? Like I was like, oh, this is totally the best way and most efficient way to do this.
Looking back, it was very caveman-esque.
Very, very. And it was only 2 years ago. Google Forms was a thing, right? So, but lesson learned. It's a lot easier now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But no, so I'm quite happy with what it's turned into. I do feel like we have quite a few members that aren't from Kind of Funny.
Yeah.
But with that being said, though, is I think we're actually that's kind of a good thing, right? Because then we can spread that positivity. Like the thing behind Kind of Wrestling was, okay, let's take that mindset and that that community tightness that Kind of Funny has, and let's transition that into the wrestling space, which is extremely toxic, like everything on the internet, but just turn it up to 10. So having people, just regular wrestling fans, kind of bleed in and see like, oh, there can be a wrestling spot that's pretty laid back and chill, and everyone seems to be really nice to each other. And since then we've grown. I think we're at just about 1,200 members.
Yeah.
And not just 1,200. I think it's an active 1,200 as well.
Yes, I think last time we checked, it's probably close to, out of those 1,200, about 550, 600 people, like on our big threads, would come check it out.
Yeah, and I mean that's pretty good. That's pretty significant. Yeah. And since then, the involvement, I know it's doing well because of the community engagement. That's one thing with Kind of Funny is everybody's kind of off doing their own thing for a certain group of people, and so with the group meetups, for example, in the main group, game nights, bunch of different things going on. Having that then into Kind of Wrestling, where we have guys that will do elimination polls, which is essentially considered those vote your least favorite, or I don't know exactly how they work. I think it's Ryan that's doing those. Mm-hmm. We have Antonio really spearheading the WWE 2K. It was 17 and now 18 league. We have the Prediction League. So there's quite a bit. Also, one of our other admins is doing brackets for the New Japan stuff. Yeah. So there's a lot of people doing a lot of different things, and it's awesome.
Plus, every week we have two nights built in for wrestling.
Yeah.
And on a pay-per-view week, like on the big weekends, there's 4 nights of that week where we have major discussions, and it's super active.
Yeah, so I'm quite happy with how it turned out, and especially the future and what we can do as far as just continuing to grow that community spirit, right?
Yeah, and I know, at least for me, when we I forget when it happened exactly, but when Cool Greg shouted us out, like on the morning show,
that
was super awesome.
Yeah, so in the early days, Tim Geddes would be so proud. What we would do is we'd go in and you'd leave your tip, right, to be read online. Mm-hmm. Again, not the completely most original idea because it's done all the time. Yeah. But, it's like the thing, I think it was the first Royal Rumble weekend, actually, so it would have been 6 months into it, is when it was initially brought up on the Kind of Funny morning show. And then since then, having Cool Greg in the fold, man, like, it's so awesome because he's such a good guy.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah, he's awesome. And to have him, kind of semi-engaged in the community and repping it is it's pretty awesome. And seeing your sign at SummerSlam last year was just, it's like, okay, well, this is getting ridiculous, right? Like,
yeah.
But it's just a testament to how awesome Kind of Funny is and how it's just bleeding into everything.
Absolutely. So, funny story about that sign, which I don't think I've told anybody. So the night before was NXT TakeOver in Brooklyn, where we had I hosted a meetup in Brooklyn. Cool Greg and Kevin were already coming out for the shows because they were doing 2K stuff.
I was so incredibly jealous. I know. Incredibly jealous.
I was so happy that we got a good turnout, and we packed that place. It was such a cool bar, too.
Yeah.
And it was like a 10-15 minute walk to the Barclays Center.
That's awesome.
So it was super close, and it was a great time. But the next day was SummerSlam, and it's like about an hour, 10-minute train ride from my train station to Barclays Center. So that Sunday I woke up and I was like, oh, I got time. I got plenty of time before I head in. And then I had the thought of my head like, ooh, I should make a sign. Because I'm pretty sure I'm close enough. Yes, you should. I am pretty sure I'm close enough to be seen on TV. And so I look at the time, I was like, oh shit, there's like 4 hours until the show. I want to get there early so I don't miss a thing. Let me leave now. So I go to the first store, zero poster board of any kind.
Selection is slim.
Selection is slim. So I run to Walmart. They have nothing. So then I was like, oh god, I'm going to miss the train. Because it's also a 45-minute drive from my town to the train station that I usually take.
Okay, yep.
So I'm like, oh shit, I should just get on the train. I'll see what they have when I get into Brooklyn.
Yep.
So I got on the train, get to Brooklyn. I run to the nearest CVS. Luckily, they had some poster board. So I'm sitting there on the sidewalk on a trash can, and I'm drawing out the signs on a trash can.
Well,
just in the middle of a packed intersection across from Barclays. And thank God it wasn't like a super close-up of the sign, because it was so messy.
But
I was not proud of that handwriting.
Well, it worked. It worked out, right? Luckily, it was just good enough to be visible on TV. So
yeah, very happy they had like the blue sign.
Yeah,
that was awesome.
Yeah, very lucky, right? After having not very much luck on your side of the town.
Yeah. But since, obviously we're huge fans of wrestling. When I say pro wrestling, Devin, what do you think of? What are some good memories of pro wrestling?
Oh, man. It's a loaded question. So, when you say pro wrestling, to me, it's first thing that comes to mind is my childhood.
Yep.
That's probably, and honestly, like most, pop culture things that people hold on to, there's definitely some childhood memory there that's kind of latched onto it. People ask me how long I've watched or when I started. I can't tell them. Like, I don't have an honest answer. I don't remember a time I didn't. So for me, when I think pro wrestling, I think being 10, 11, 12 years old, sitting in front of the TV on a Monday night, not supposed to be up right now, but watching Monday Night Raw. So that's immediately what comes to mind when I think of pro wrestling.
Yeah, I remember those days trying to sneak downstairs into the other room to watch wrestling and keep it on super low volume.
And it would never work because my volume would always get way louder than the TV.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because whenever you turn the TV off on, the volume was set to that.
Yeah.
It was like super quickly. Oh shit! Let me mute it.
And I remember one time in particular. It was we were finally going to get the reveal of the Stone Cold Steve Austin who hit him in the car.
Oh,
yeah,
what a great time!
Awesome.
Yeah.
And I remember it being Rikishi and just being really loud and screaming and waking everybody up. And here I am supposed to be in bed because I have to be at 6th grade the next day. So
yeah.
But
that was me when Mick Foley won the championship.
Yeah, that's another big one.
That's a fellow Long Island boy winning the title. And that was a big moment.
Yeah, I imagine that's for me. That would have been at that time. I would have been probably 7 or 8. So that was the Tuesday replay time for me. Right up until that point, I just physically couldn't stay awake that late.
Yeah. So yeah, what about who was your favorite wrestler when you were growing up?
Triple H.
Triple H. Okay.
Yeah, Triple H. Because I love the Attitude Era. But again, I was 8 through 12, 13. So when I think of Triple H, I loved him back then, but then once you get into the evolution years and more my formative years, right? So you're talking 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. The stuff he did when he was on Raw, I was just... He's awesome. The modern nature boy. He really is...
Absolutely.
Ric Flair. And I loved it. I loved every second of it.
So Triple H is going to be taken over eventually, and I think it's going to be in such a better place. Not that it isn't in a good place now, but the fact that he was a wrestler when I was growing up, and like you said, he's your favorite wrestler. He knows the business, and what he's doing with NXT and the developmental leagues is what I'm super excited to see on TV every week.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely helping the in-ring product. And then that is just a result of, like you said, being in the ring. And so he's definitely in a good spot, right? Because, I mean, he's learning from Vince, one of the greatest promoters of all time. But he also has that wrestling mind and that knowledge of being in there. So I feel like he's going to do really well. As I've gotten older and just seeing the way that some of these businesses work now, right? It's entirely plausible to see a future where WWE is not owned by Vince and the McMahons, so I find prospects like that really exciting. Not that I want to see them lose it or,
Absolutely.
but you just, to me, you think of a major company. Like, can you imagine if Disney got their hands on WWE? And I know it's such a wild thought, but it's one of those things where I sit there and I go, man, like what they did for Star Wars and what they did for Marvel, and I'm not putting WWE in, apples and oranges, different things, but at the end of the day, it's an entertainment property with value and a huge library. It's such a commodity to have that I think it's not out of the realm of possibility to have a big company like that come in and just buy it.
Could you imagine if Disney bought out WWE and we got one of those Selena Gomez Disney kid shows, but it's wrestling based?
I mean, we have John Cena, auditioning for Steve from Blue's Clues. So it's a whole new world here in 2018, and who knows?
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. When you were a kid, could you imagine that we would get our childhood heroes, like The Rock, turn out to be into one of the biggest movie stars in the world?
Man, it's so crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah,
because
right?
you're like, I remember when he went, he did the Scorpion King and the Mummy 2, and on the rundown, I'm like, okay, it's The Rock. I'm supporting him. He's one of us.
Yeah. I mean, we had movies with Hulk Hogan and Roddy Piper.
Mr. Nanny. Yeah. I mean, love that as a kid. No joke.
But nothing to the caliber of what The Rock is doing. And John Cena, too. Cena's out, and he's, really a funny guy in these comedy films.
He really, really is. And it's one of those things where, what I portrayed onto The Rock back when he first started doing it, I find myself portraying that onto John Cena now, where it's like he'll get these roles, but they're nothing significant, but I'm going to support it. You know, of course, you know he's good, but you know, if The Rock proved that it's going to take is one or two hit Disney movies, and then transition into an action star, and like it's I think John Cena has too much of a chiseled Americana look that doesn't quite scream big box office to me like The Rock does. But you know,
I see what I want selfishly. I want John Cena and The Rock to go at it in a future Fast and Furious movie.
Oh man,
I want them to butt heads so bad.
Oh, Kyle, and that could happen, Kyle.
I know that could happen.
We live in a world where that could actually happen.
Because that was when The Rock came back to wrestling after doing huge movie movie roles. Excuse me. That was at a point where I stopped watching wrestling.
Okay.
I went away to college and, you know, doing busy college things, trying to stay on top of my grades, playing games instead of doing homework. Wrestling just kind of fell by the wayside. So when I heard that The Rock was coming back and to face John Cena, who's somebody else that I was a huge fan of in high school, it sparked that interest in me again. And the fact that there's a small chance that there could be a huge action blockbuster with those two going at it, it makes me super excited.
Yeah, and I'm mind blown. I never actually considered that, but that is something that could totally happen.
Yeah. And now that Ronda Rousey's in WWE, she can show up too.
I mean, it's wild. It's so crazy. It's so crazy that this is where we're at now with wrestling. You know, I feel like it's a good thing, and you know, it's a bad thing, but it's just it's a lovely car wreck.
It is a lovely car wreck, yeah. So besides wrestling, and we know you're into games because you're going to a gaming school.
Yeah.
One of the things I do know about you is that you are a huge Power Rangers fan. Am I right?
Yeah, huge.
What about the Power Rangers excites you?
Tommy.
Just Tommy.
Just Tommy. Well, that's kind of, you know, that's what started it, you know. So I'm in a very similar boat as Tim. I was born in 1990, so Power Rangers On is kind of where my memories start of that era, I guess, of cartoons, Saturday morning type thing.
Yeah, like the earliest geek memory.
Yeah. Those are the early stuff, right? So, Power Rangers was just I couldn't get enough of it. I don't know exactly what it was. I mean, it was cool. You know, these costumes were awesome. The theme music was awesome.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like, I went to Catholic school.
Oh.
So when I came home, I was all about taking the awful maroon and gray uniform off. And I had, for Christmas one year, I got those Power Rangers gloves that had the button in them that would make the fighting and punching sound.
Yep.
So I would put them on, sit in front of my TV, and I would just binge Power Rangers on VHS until it was dinner time. Yeah,
well, and it's very similar, actually. I'd come home from school. I lived with my mother and my grandfather and my grandmother, and so early on in my life, my grandfather was a barber, and so he would work till 5 o'clock. Power Rangers came on at 5 o'clock. So every day, being the spoiled child that I was, and also I'm very fortunate and thankful for my grandfather, but bringing home the child a bag of ketchup chips and a Pepsi, you know, now that I'm 27 and doing that pretty much my young years, right?
Yeah.
Probably didn't develop the best habits that I should have. But those are the memories I have. Just Humpty Dumpty ketchup chips and a bottle of Pepsi and just watching the Power Rangers.
Yeah.
And it's one of my earlier memories. And it's just stuck with me. And getting nephews into it and kind of passing it down and growing up with it. It's just something that attached myself to and haven't really let go of.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember, like, besides the TV show, the Power Rangers movie. The
Ivan Ooze.
That stands out so much in my mind because I believe that might have been the first time I went to the theater with my dad. Like, my dad took me, and I remember being so excited. We'd go to McDonald's to get, like, the toys and the Happy Meals, and just being all about Ivan Ooze in the Power Rangers movie.
Yeah, that was it was. So, if you could only be 5 or 6 years old again, and to go back and experience that stuff for the first time, it's just you watch it now and you love it and you have an appreciation for it, but it's just it's not the same. It's made for kids.
Yeah.
So
I owe Power Rangers a lot because not only was it my first step into like those type of shows, like you said, the cartoons and Power Rangers action kid type shows.
Yeah.
But that introduced me to like my first celebrity crush ever in Amy Jo Johnson.
Well, let me tell you, Kimberly, that's and it's funny. Kimberly, obviously, my first crush as well.
Yeah.
For a lot of people our age.
Yeah, exactly.
And I remember my brother was born during this time, and me being just so upset at my mother because she did not name him Tommy was just, I mean, because she'll bring it up, and I laugh because not only was Tommy Power Rangers, but Tommy was the Rugrats.
Yeah.
So like, if I could have back then, I would have changed my name to Tommy. Like,
so I'm going to assume whenever you have your first child and it's a boy, it's going to be Tommy.
That's a very, very safe assumption. Very safe. And if I can, if I can ever meet Jason David Frank, he does a lot of cons and stuff like that. For me, it's I gotta be a little bit better and smarter about this. I plan a lot of my geek trips, but I never seem to plan like a Comic-Con or like something like that. I'm always like, okay, well, let's go to Survivor Series. I'm actually coming up to your neck of the woods. I'm coming up to New York in August for SummerSlam.
Yeah, it's gonna be awesome.
So yeah, so it's always wrestling stuff, but I definitely need to get smarter because like again, it's not like it's that hard to track him down and get a meet and greet with the guy. He's everywhere.
Yeah,
but I just never think of it.
My first New York Comic Con I went to, I was standing in line waiting to meet Felicia Day. Do you know what Felicia Day is?
Yes, that rings a bell.
She does Geek and Sundry. She was on a bunch of the CW shows. Like,
was she in the Amazing Spider-Man 2?
No, I don't think she was.
Okay.
But I know her more for her YouTube work.
Okay.
Other than, I think, if I might be totally wrong, but I think she was in Buffy.
Okay.
Or one of those CW shows. But I was waiting in line to meet her. And there was this huge long line next to me, like way out past the exit doors. And I was waiting there in line for a long time. And all of a sudden I hear the ginormous roar of the line next to me. And I see somebody sprinting down the aisle with a phone above his head.
Yeah.
And he just sprints down the aisle, jumps up on top of the table and stands up. And it was Jason David Frank. And he was so hyped to be there. And that, for everyone that was waiting for hours in that room, we were all obviously all grumpy because we were just standing there not doing anything. He brought that energy up to like an 11.
He just seems like a really, really good dude. Like,
yeah.
Every interview I see of him, he's embraced what he was and what he meant to people, and it's just awesome. It's funny seeing the rumors, I guess it's probably 2 years ago now, of my two worlds colliding with that potential MMA match between the Green Ranger and CM Punk in those early days when Punk went to MMA. I was just like, man, like I don't think my brain would be able to handle what is going on.
Definitely. Now I know, other than Power Rangers, I also know you're a big hockey fan.
Yeah, huge hockey fan.
Yeah, the Ottawa Senators, right?
Yeah, I'm a huge Ottawa Senators fan.
Now, can you sell me on hockey as a whole?
Because
I am not a huge hockey person.
Okay, well, football?
I like football.
You like football?
Yeah.
It's completely different. What I would suggest would be to.
I like how that comparison started. You like football? Yeah. Well, they're completely different.
They're completely different. What I would suggest would be to catch a playoff game, and one of meaning with a fast-paced tempo. Hockey's a great sport. Being Canadian, I think it's a requirement to like hockey.
And curling, right? That's the other one?
Curling, but again, curling's not as mainstream. So I'm not huge into curling. I honestly probably couldn't even tell you the rules of curling. I know there's rocks involved.
Someone told me that in school, like in gym class, you guys actually do curling, or some schools in Canada do.
I imagine some do. There is a form of shuffleboard, I guess, but not actual. I didn't experience curling in PE in gym class.
Because that's my dream. I would love to do that.
Yeah, no, and I have some buddies that do it. And, it's really fun. But gym class for me was ball hockey. We played ball hockey a lot. No, I'm a huge hockey fan. The thing I love about hockey is just is how fast it can be. And there often is great storylines as well to follow, and it's super athletic. And for me, I fell in love with it. And being an East Coast kid, your choices in teams are Toronto and Montreal. Those are the two main pillars of East Coast kids growing up. But again, Ottawa came into the league, when I was extremely young, and I just latched onto them. And that's another team that I haven't let go of. There's a lot of younger fans of hockey that are Ottawa Senators fans, but you're not going to find anyone over the age of 30 that's an Ottawa Senators fan.
Oh, okay. Was it a expansion team?
Yeah, it was. It was an expansion team in 92. And again, not only was it an expansion team, but it's a small market team, and it's right between Toronto and Montreal. Yeah. Two of the biggest Canadian markets. So they have had an uphill battle since the start. Just gaining fans in their own market, let alone in other areas that don't have teams.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I'm a huge fan. It's been tough this year because they haven't been doing very well, especially with how close they were last year. And
I know that feeling very well. Which we'll talk about when we get into the topic, but
yeah, and I knew it as well that was the year. I could feel it. I when they went to it was the Eastern Conference Final. It was Game 6, and I bought tickets, and I was like, I have class, but I'm just going. So I was about, from where I'm at currently to Ottawa, is about a 13-hour drive.
Wow.
So I drove straight up. I got there about 3 in the afternoon. Waited until the gates opened. Went in. We won to force a Game 7. And then drove all the way back right after the game. I drove 26 hours. Or I drove 26 hours in a 36-hour period.
That's dedication. That's awesome.
Yeah. It was an experience. Probably one of the best moments of my life.
Yeah.
And then the utter heartbreak that followed 2 days later when they lost in double overtime. Because I knew that they have to do it this year. There's going to be some setbacks.
Yeah. So speaking of getting hyped over things. Let's go straight into a old GOG topic where we'll discuss it amongst ourselves. That's one of the segments on the show. So, Devin, what topic is it that you want to talk about?
Well, I'm going to pull an audible on you. I know we had talked earlier. Yeah.
Okay.
He's like, oh, jeez. Are you ready for this one? It was the board game topic from episode 35.
Okay. So, wait, before we get into the board game thing, since I referenced it earlier, what I was going to say was, I know the feeling as a New York Mets fan. When the Mets were in the World Series, being so hyped and excited, and my life revolves around the Mets. Not that it already doesn't, but when they were in the playoffs and they had that huge run made to the World Series, if they made it to a Game 7 and I had the money and it was playing in Kansas City that year, I would have totally driven all the way out to Kansas City. I would have done the same thing. It's something about the fandom that will do anything to experience it live and with other people.
Well, and not only that, but how difficult it is. Like, people don't realize, like, how crazy is it, a team, for me, the Ottawa Senators has been around for 26, 27 years now, and haven't won the cup, and attaching yourself year after year after year, and just holding on to hope. And people don't realize the emotion that gets tacked on every year, and then you get so close, and you're just, it's one thing that I love about sports, because it's the fandom, like you said, and you get attached to it, and it just grows and grows, that anticipation, and when you get so close, it means everything.
I sobbed uncontrollably when the Mets made it to the World Series. It was hard. Leave me alone. Give me all the tissues. I will sit here and cry tears of joy for the rest of my life. And I hope I get that experience again.
Yeah. It's and I'm sure you will.
I hope so.
Let's just hope we get the Mets in the World Series and Ottawa in the Cup final next year.
I'm totally okay with that.
Good trade-off.
All right, so the topic you're bringing up is board games. What about them?
Yeah, so this topic, I'm actually in the process. I have some spare time, and I've been going through and watching some of the old stuff for the first time, actually, since I watched originally. And what I loved about some of the earlier stuff, the shows they did, was the fact that you could tell that they were still just kind of getting to know each other. And feel each other out a bit. Like, I know they've worked together, and Colin and Greg obviously had great chemistry. But it's just seeing the dynamic between Nick and Tim and Greg and Colin all together, it's just it was one of the more endearing things that I loved about it. And the board games topic kind of stuck out because I remember listening to that when I was out west, and that kind of sparked my love for board games. And so since then I've gone on to fall in love with many board games. And I was just kind of wondering, what do you enjoy board games? If you do, like, what kind? And if you do it more of like in a social manner, like, or family manner, like, how do you enjoy board games, right?
So I love board games. It was much like that topic, and also Will Wheaton's show on YouTube called Tabletop. I don't know if you've checked that out, Devin.
I have, yeah.
I love that show. I wish more episodes would come out, but I don't really play board games with my family. It's just not something that we do. We're very stubborn people, the Stevensons. So I can imagine if we tried to play something together as a family, very bad arguments would start and just not stop.
Chaos ensues.
Yeah, but as I work after school and summer camp, I play board games like nonstop, and I try to bring the board games in from tabletop. Actually, I try to bring them to camp, summer camp, and after school to introduce these kids to board games, because I feel it's a lost art nowadays.
It is, and I think it's one of those things that, as you get older, I think you come to appreciate them more and more. Yeah. They made a good point during this GOG topic, was there's board games, but then there's also toys that are board games. I guess they're games in a traditional sense, but like, so Hungry Hungry Hippo.
Yeah.
When I think board games as a kid, like, it's Hungry Hungry Hippo, it's Mousetrap, it's Connect 4, and while they're games, they're more toys, right? Which I never really considered it that way, but now it's me for board games. It's Monopoly. They talk about it quite extensively, and Colin's obsession with the NES version of Monopoly he had, and he would have the AIs face each other and write statistics, very, very Colin fashion.
Yeah.
No, it was a great topic, and just listening to them talk about board games, it definitely lit a spark.
Like, Monopoly is a huge one. Something I didn't play when I was little a whole lot, but my after-school kids that I help with their homework, they're middle school age, and last year or the year before that, we got them into Monopoly pretty like hardcore, and those games get intense amongst the counselors and the kids.
It brings out the absolute worst in people. Like, you have airports, and then you have Monopoly. Those are the two things that just bring out the worst in people. Especially myself, I get way too into Monopoly.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, especially because then again, for me, board games now with my friends and my girlfriend and stuff, it's more of a social thing. So there's always drinking involved.
Yeah.
So that just adds fuel to the fire. We play a lot of Monopoly and a lot of Risk.
Now, can I ask you, when it comes to Monopoly, what house rules do you play with? Because I'm constantly being questioned about the house rules I play during after school.
Yeah, well, generally what we do is I feel like ours are pretty accurate. And any liberties we do take, we kind of try to stay consistent. So we do the free parking thing.
Okay, how much do you put in the middle?
I believe it's $50 to start.
Okay.
And then any taxes or whatever goes there.
Yep. So that's what I do. That's how I usually play. But my coworkers, one of my coworkers in particular, says no. We're gonna start with 500 in the middle. I go, you're insane. I don't like that at all. And it just so happens whenever he gets his way and we play that way, he always lands on free parking, and he always has an edge on everybody.
Yeah,
from the get-go.
That's the way life is, right? I mean, he fights to get it, and then of course he's the one that lands on it. So we try to stay consistent with the rules that we do play.
Yeah.
I was saying earlier, we play a lot of Risk, and I've gotten into card games as well recently.
Risk is a good one. I have a good memory at college with Risk. My sophomore year, I went to school upstate in SUNY Oswego, right on Lake Ontario. And so there was a week in February where we got 7 to 8 feet of snow, like nonstop. So classes were canceled. We were stuck in our dorms. I lived in a suite with 5 other guys, and we decided on day 2 of being stuck inside to play Risk. Like, what's the worst that could happen? We got so intense because we couldn't leave and take breaks from each other, and the game got so heated that we wanted to rip each other's throats out.
Close quarters, your snowstorm, and add Risk to the mix. Yeah,
I don't think I've played Risk since then.
Yeah, we get pretty competitive with Risk. But the thing about Risk is too, I don't like playing with people that are competitive but also stubborn and refuse to lose. Like for me, for example, I would rather us. Okay, I made a mistake here. I'm losing. I'm not going to be able to win.
Yeah.
Not forfeit, but let's not take the long road here to get this victory. Let's hammer out another game, right?
Yeah. Don't draw it out.
No, don't draw your death out, right? Like it's killing me here. Like, let's just finish this game and start another one.
I'm on the opposite side. When I'm playing with kids, like at summer camp or something, I will draw that out for as long as possible.
My girlfriend does the same thing.
It makes it more fun for them. So like I'm playing it up that I'm losing so bad. Like I get up, I throw my hat against the wall, I fake cry, and my boss came in last summer. It's like, Kyle, it's a game. You don't have to get so intense about it. I go, I'm not doing it because I'm really upset. I'm doing it so those kids can go home and be so happy that they beat a grown-up in this game. And they did it in a way that got him so upset.
he pulls tantrums when he loses. Yeah.
Making memories. Yeah. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, no, my girlfriend does the same thing, and like, especially Monopoly, right? And you're looking and you're like, okay, there's literally no way. Like, statistically, it's close to impossible for you to come back from this situation.
Yeah.
But let's just keep rolling dice until until you eventually lose. Drives me crazy.
Now, do you have any board games that you played when you were younger that you look back today and they don't really hold up as well?
All those toys we mentioned.
Yep.
So, Hungry Hungry Hippo, Connect 4, Mouse Trap. Like they said, Mouse Trap, is the stupidest thing in the world that was only sold because of a damn commercial.
Yep.
Like, the commercial made it look like so much fun. I don't remember if this is accurate or not, but I seem to recall that nowhere in the commercial does it tell you build the damn mousetrap as you play the game.
Yep.
It doesn't. They leave that tidbit information out. Mm-hmm. They have it all built and everybody's rolling, having fun, and the mousetrap's doing its thing. They don't tell you that that's the very end of the game. That you have to go and build it as you go. Because I know for me, as soon as I think I got it for Christmas or something, and as soon as I realized that, I was like, I've been lied to, and I don't like it.
Yeah.
I don't like it one bit.
That's how I felt with most board games where you open it up and you have to build like these huge things before you can even play.
Yeah, anything with some assembly required, it's...
The Goosebumps game comes to mind when I was younger. There was a Goosebumps game and it was like a graveyard and you had to like put all the tombstones in and build this whole backdrop. It took way too long for little old Kyle to build. So by the time it was time to play, I was like, I'm done.
Oh, okay, yeah. I think I remember Terror in the Graveyard.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I don't think I've ever actually played that. I was huge into the Goosebumps as a kid, but...
Yeah, the one that doesn't really hold up for me that I had a huge amount of fun with when I was younger was Candyland.
Candyland.
But now it's just like, what's the point?
What is the point of any of this? No, there's a lot of those games where it's just, like Snakes and Ladders and stuff. And you're like, oh, I'm having so much fun. But again, you go back and you play it now, I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
I mean, simple rules. You moving stuff, rolling dice, that's fun, right?
Yeah. Like, you mentioned card games. What are some of your card games that you enjoy?
Right now we play, it's called Epic Battle Wizards, I believe it's called.
Okay.
Duel at Mount Skullfire. There's two of them. There's that, and there's an expansion pack. Mm-hmm. It's a really, really cool card game. The nice thing about it is you don't have to have all separate decks and things like that. Like, it's just you play from the one deck. Everybody draws 7 cards. And basically the premise of the game is to put together combinations of spells and knock out everybody that's playing around you. They have a little hit health point counter.
I believe that was on an episode of Tabletop, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was, yeah.
I think I remember seeing that one.
Yeah, so we play that quite a bit. And then also Sentinels in the Multiverse.
Okay. What's that one about?
That one is way more in depth. That one is really cool. It's basically a ripoff of DC Marvel. So it's a superhero card game.
I'm listening.
Yeah. And so you have Captain America, you have Batman, you have all of them in there, but they're not quite Captain America or Batman. They're knockoff versions.
Yeah.
And what you do is it comes with each player picks a hero to play as, and each hero has their own individual deck. Okay. And it's a co-op game where you then choose a villain and an environment to play this match out in. And it's similar card, and like any card game, you draw cards and play different combinations with what you have as far as heroes. So each player gets a turn, then the environment gets a turn, and then the villain gets a turn.
Okay.
And the villain obviously having an advantage. So yeah, that's one, and they have tons of expansion packs. So
that sounds cool.
It's really, really fun. And if I do end up driving down to New York this summer, I will absolutely take it and maybe get something like that going at a meet and greet, because that's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of some other games that I play now at summer camp. I mean, I talked about it a little bit on my episode with Zyger. A game called Mafia. It's not really a board game, but there is a card game that's almost like it called Resistance.
Okay.
Which I love. Everyone gets a character card. There's a certain amount of spies on each in each game, depending on how many people play. And it's up to the spies to get 3 fails and the resistance to get 3 passes. And you kind of have to figure out who's a spy based on who goes in on what team. And
Okay, so that's like that werewolf game.
yes, very much like Werewolf.
Yeah.
That's a great card game. Again, I found it on Tabletop on the YouTube channel. And then shout out to just like Uno.
Yeah, Uno is awesome.
I've had some big battles in Uno.
Yeah, especially if there is alcohol involved, that always makes it a lot more fun. Uno. There's something to be said about just sitting down and interacting as a group just to play a game. Mm-hmm. You do get, even in video games, you get an experience of coach co-op or even multiplayer, but just having everyone around a table and interacting and communicating, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's a lost art.
Yeah, it's. But like I said, I feel like it's coming back a bit more. I don't know, like maybe I'm just saying it's coming back because I play it, right? So it has to be. It has to be coming back because why else would I do it?
It's becoming a more regular part of your daily routine, so of course it's coming back.
Yeah, of course. But no, I do notice more adult like board game cafe type things where like they just have a wide selection of board games and then they just sell booze and stuff like that.
Yeah, that'd be awesome if one opened up around me.
Yeah, so think of like Dave and Buster's, but like no board games or no games. It's just all board games.
I'd be totally down.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's really, really cool.
I would just do like kind of funny meetups there. That's like where we would go.
Yeah, and that is probably one of the more ideal locations is stuff like that because the games that they have in the selection is just unbelievable. You go through and you look and you're like, wow, I remember that game. I don't know what it's called, but I remember seeing it when I was 5, and here it is.
Yeah.
On the shelf, right? So there's just there's lots of cool moments like that.
Yeah. That's awesome. So thank you, Devin, for bringing the board game topic to the table.
Yeah, no, it's no problem.
So now we got some questions for you.
Oh, I'm ready.
So be prepared. The first question, now before I ask this one, I'm pretty sure you're not on Twitter, correct?
You are correct. You are correct.
So here's the question from Kaylee Woomer at Quirks of Art. Why don't you have a Twitter?
It's a good question. There's just too much.
Yeah.
For me, there's just way too much. I had it at one point, but there's just so I primarily had Twitter for wrestling stuff, just to follow wrestlers and stuff like that. But they're everywhere now, and like for me, like I'm old, so I'm still using Facebook. Mm-hmm. I hardly ever use Instagram. Maybe I'll use it a little bit, and then Snapchat just to communicate with like friends and stuff like that. But there's just way too much.
Yeah,
just way too much, and I get the appeal, but nah.
All right. Well, for me, Twitter is like one of my preferred forms of social media. I personally don't understand Snapchat. I'm very much like the guys when they had Tim try to explain it to them.
Yeah.
I just don't get it.
Well, see, I have a younger brother, right? And it's so they're all about the Snapchat, right? So it's a young man's game.
Next question is these next couple are from actually the Kind of Wrestling group.
Oh, our people.
Yeah. So first one, they're not like the best questions in the world, but I'll ask them anyway. From Christian Munoz, do you like wrestling?
Oh, yep.
Now, here's a good point. He doesn't say pro wrestling, so you do like regular wrestling.
Oh,
like
no.
Kurt Angle wrestle with a broken frickin' neck.
No.
Yeah.
And I can't even watch Foxcatcher, and I like movies. That was a bad movie. People liked it, but that was...
I haven't watched it yet. It's on my list.
Oh, spoiler alert. Not that great.
Next question comes from Ryan Honorado, the guy who does the elimination polls in the group.
Yeah.
Are you going to fuck up Kind of Wrestling and make a Kinda XFL?
That's the ultimate goal. is to do that. Oh boy, because it's coming back.
It is coming
back.
back.
Oh no. Oh, he may be onto something. Hopefully others have contingency plans in place to kind of take over and pick up the scraps that are left when I do my ultimate damage.
Oh jeez. Logan Michael Corkin says, can he interrupt halfway and give you a stunner? Since we're past halfway, I don't think that happened.
No, but no.
He's welcome to try.
Here's what I'll say: if he shows up at SummerSlam in August in New York, I will take a Stone Cold Stunner from him, recorded and posted on social media. So there it is.
You heard that, Logan.
You heard that. Show up SummerSlam, and I will let it happen.
Next one from the group is from Gerard Gambino. Are you looking for any personal ring boys?
No.
No, yeah.
No, I'm not. But send me your resume. Slide into those DMs, and we'll see what we can do for you.
Try your best. I mean, that's all you can do.
You swing and you miss, right? You swing and you miss.
So now that we got those silly, ridiculous questions out of the way, these last two are actually kind of more of a thinker. The first one is from Andrew Gonzalez. He is asking you, what is the best wrestling video game to you?
That's a good question. See, what's the best?
Yeah. For me, it go back to like the PlayStation 2 ones.
Yeah, those are the earlier ones.
Yeah,
the
Here
earlier
Comes the
PlayStation
Pain,
ones.
Know Your Role.
Yeah, I think Shut Your Mouth and Here Comes the Pain are probably the best because those two seem to combine they found the perfect sweet spot where it was you have the arcade style but also have some real elements to it and like a storytelling, a story mode and stuff like that. I did really like No Mercy. Even WCW NWO Revenge. Hated WCW as a kid.
Yep.
But I played that game. While they're good games, I don't think they're the best. So for me, I'm going to go with Here Comes the Pain.
Yeah, that's my vote.
Yeah, because the 2K games are trash.
Yeah, they're not. It's
They're
not
so
what
bad.
I want from it. The reason why my vote is Here Comes the Pain is because I love what they did with the story. Like, there was an actual story to it. You're not grinding and doing all these meaningless matches for someone to come up and the story doesn't continue where it was going before. It goes somewhere else.
It's so cumbersome now. Like they've gone to the point where it's they're trying to make it way too realistic and like a wrestling sim. And it's not fun. Like why? So before I have a match, I have to go to a loading screen. Okay, then I have to walk up to this producer, check the match card, another loading screen. After the match, another loading screen. Then before I can even advance to the next week, I have to run to the guy in the parking lot and say goodbye. It's just so stupid. It's awful.
Yeah, it's
awful.
Just go back to having a writer and write an actual story out. I don't care if it only lasts a year. Like,
exactly.
In-game. That's what I want. Because when I play wrestling games, sure, I'll play like established characters that are already in there, like the wrestlers we see on TV and the legends and stuff. But I create myself. I find that more fun in wrestling games.
Yeah, it is. That's some of the appeal to it, right? So having a story mode in there, and like now to me it feels so bare bones now because like you don't even have the option to play like the Road to WrestleMania storylines that they had in some of those like late 2010 or early 2010 ones, right? So like while those weren't great, at least I was doing something, right, and playing a storyline. But no, it's just I think it needs to take an Assassin's Creed approach, and I think it needs to go away for a year.
Yeah,
and,
I'd be totally okay
come
with
back. Yeah, I think they have to.
Or hey, 2K, if you want to hire someone to write the story out, I'm available. I'll do it.
Yeah, and I'm sure it would be 10 times better than what
I would hope so.
Because there's no real stories at all in it. Not really, I don't think.
There's like an off chance, like you run into someone. Like I think when I stopped playing the career mode, The Rock like texted me on my phone and said something like, "Hey, keep fighting the man. Do what you got to do." I was like, "All right, I'm done."
Enough of this.
Yeah. And then our last question comes from Jorge Cruz Alvarez at jcruzalvarez26 on Twitter. He's recently gotten back into wrestling after being away for 8 years. He's been catching up with the excellent women's division. But what other matches are a must-watch from when he stopped watching?
Must-watch?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, luckily, when you stopped watching, it wasn't that great for a while. Mm-hmm. So, 2011, you're going to want to go back and watch the Money in the Bank pay-per-view match between CM Punk and John Cena. Mm-hmm. Probably one of the best stories and matches in modern WWE history, especially at least in this decade. The story going into that was just so well done, and then the story that they told in the ring to match the story they told outside the ring was just it was awesome. That's a must watch. If you're not watching takeovers, just watch them all.
Absolutely.
Stop what you're doing and just watch them all. They're all consistently great.
Yeah, if you just want to go to the network and watch every single NXT takeover show, it's probably some of the best wrestling pay-per-view event type shows that I've ever watched since I was a little kid.
Yeah, they're just fantastic. Like if they could take that and just transition that into their main product, it'd be a home run. But
absolutely. I would also throw out their WrestleMania 30, Daniel Bryan versus Triple H, and then the main event.
Yeah, huge.
That's fantastic.
Huge. That's one where I was really bitter back then with everything that was going on in that fake wrestling world. Yep. And to see that happen was, they almost lost me. But thank goodness they did the right thing. Well, what I consider to be right.
Yeah. I would also the CM Punk title reign when he won and then he left the company in kayfabe terms.
Yeah.
And then he came back and John Cena was champion and CM Punk was the original champion and they butted heads. That whole feud is fantastic.
Yeah, that was the continuation of that Money in the Bank match when he left, and that was very well done. In typical fashion, it wasn't executed perfectly, but the matches were great. And then that reign that he went on when he beat Del Rio, everything that he did there was just.
I was there in person for that.
Oh, really? That was in New York.
Yep, that was Survivor Series, Madison Square Garden, when that epic title reign began.
That must have been the last show they've done at the Garden.
It's one of the last ones, and it makes me sad because the Garden is a special place.
Yeah, because I think TLC. What year did the Shield debut?
That was Barclays Center, and I was there for that one too.
And I think that was the first one at the Barclays Center, and they haven't gone back to MSG.
Yeah, but also Jorge, you're starting off right. The women right now are killing it.
And if you haven't seen Lita and Trish from Raw, I think it was like 2005, maybe. I think that's what it was. They main evented Raw, and that was really good. Where Lita, you always see the highlight of Lita jumping the suicide dive, and Sasha banksing it at the end where she breaks her back.
Yeah,
that was awesome.
And if you go back and you watch the old takeovers, you'll get to see Bayley and Sasha put on classic matches. Not even just for the women, just in pro wrestling in general. Yeah,
those were some very, very well told matches.
Yeah. So that's it for questions. Devin, I'm so honored you decided to come on. Thank you for everything.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me, man. This is it's pretty awesome what it's all turned into, and and going forward. It makes me happy to see people in the community kind of coming outside their comfort zone and doing all this stuff. It's inspiring and it's awesome.
Yeah, well, thank you. Where can they find you since you're not on Twitter?
Nowhere.
You can find them in Kinda Wrestling on Facebook.
In Kinda Wrestling on Facebook, and even then, if you get me on a bad day, I'm not even gonna look at it. No. No, you can find me on Facebook. I am on Instagram at DevDaddyW.
Awesome.
And on the PSN as well.
PSN, yeah.
Yeah, PSN as well as DevDaddyW.
And since this is kind of like the Kind of Wrestling episode, in a couple weeks we're having the first ever Kind of Mania.
Yeah.
And if you want to get involved in that, we're trying and we're planning to have our own WrestleMania card with our created wrestlers.
Yeah, Antonio's putting in the work there, and we got some cool ideas, and we're looking to stream that probably likely the afternoon of WrestleMania. So if you're a kind of funny or a wrestling fan and you're in kind of wrestling, WrestleMania Sunday is going to be a long day for you.
Yeah,
because the pre-show probably starts at noon,
Mm-hmm.
it runs until about 12 o'clock at night, but then we're going to tack on 3 more hours at 9 a.m. coming at you with the WWE 2K18 streamed on Twitch.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot, but it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, there's a lot of wrestling going on that weekend. I know some admin members. I think Eric is going to be down actually in Orlando, and I know there are quite a few of the Kind of Wrestling crew that are going down. So I'd love to see them, link up and post some pictures together and have us be there in spirit.
Yep, and I also just realized that is the weekend of PAX East. So there's a shot that if I'm still in Boston, if I can still make it to PAX East, I might stay and we'll watch WrestleMania together there. I don't know.
Yeah,
but
I'll
figure that out on my end. You can follow me at WhoDatNinja73 on Twitter, on PSN. You can follow this show at BFS Talk Funny on Twitter. If you're watching on YouTube, which is the only place you can watch it right now until I figure out how to get it on iTunes, you already know the channel name, so please subscribe. Open to feedback and critique, so let me have it, good, bad. I'm a big boy. I want to make this a quality thing, so please let me know. And again, Devin, thank you. Hope you have a great rest of your night.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's we lose an hour tonight, so I'm not quite happy about that, right? Like, it's 7 a.m. I work on the weekends, and 7 a.m. comes quick enough. Now you're going to take an hour away from me?
Oh, yeah, no, that's
like,
not
who made these rules? Anyway, like, who decided that we'll give an hour and we'll take an hour? Like, I'm not on board with this whole daylight savings time.
You know what, Logan? Instead of going after Devin, go stun the guy who wants to do daylight savings time.
Yeah, it's his fault. I'm pretty sure... Oh, goodness. That was a sign... No, never mind. Tangent. It's fine.
Anyway, thank you for listening to episode 3. And until next time, be kind to one another. Bye!